Hello, hello, hello. Dia Gwiv Galer, welcome along. Nice to hear from you again and see you too. So you are a product of your own dreams. If you don't like who you are, then it is your obligation and your opportunity to dream another dream. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the superpower that lies dormant in all Irish people. And that is the power of our dreams. Friends, Colini, Bukali, boys and girls, welcome to Healing from Irishness. Hello, how are you? I've just had a lovely biscuit and I'm now drinking a cup of coffee, and the rain is tipping down outside my window. I live in Mallorca. I moved over here about 2 years ago, kind of in response to my dad dying. I was just like, I want to go live on a small island in the sun and lick my wounds. And I knew I had some friends out here. I'd spent a couple of winters out here, and that's what I did. But the one thing I miss living here in Mallorca is I miss the rain. So today is an absolute joy for me. It's also a joy because I'm really beginning to enjoy making these podcasts. I noticed the other week my mom was visiting, so I didn't record, and I didn't make a podcast, and I was like, something's missing here. So I'm very excited to jump into this again. This podcast itself has been coming to me for about the last 10 days, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit before. I think in the last episode I wanted to introduce my process a little, just so you kind of know what to expect. I don't script these podcasts. I get an idea, and the idea will come back to me over and over again. And eventually, when I can't say no to the idea anymore, when it's a little bit like a persistent phone call, I sit down, I turn on my little recording equipment, I light a candle, because I'm a bit of a witch like that. And then I just start to record, and I talk, and I try to trust that what's going to come out of me won't necessarily have so much to do with me. It'll more be connected to the other realms, the realms of wisdom and knowledge that a clear mind can connect to. So that's exactly what I want to talk about here. I want to talk about the power of imagination and the power of channeling and the power of dreams. Irish birthrights. You know, I think probably the single greatest tragedy of our recent history is how we've lost our connection to our imagination. We have become so automatic. We've adopted a kind of a narrow-minded approach to life. This can be said of the world in general. This can be said of most of the industrial world in general, but I think in particular amongst Irish people, I see this. And it's because of how we've been conditioned, and because of the level of fear that we experienced, which then allowed us to be conditioned in this way. It allowed us to turn away from what we knew to be true. So, and what happens with this turning away is that we just end up in a constant state of repetition. There is nothing new comes along. We're repeating the relationship styles of our parents. We're repeating the trauma of our parents. We're repeating the same career formulas, the same education systems that destroyed your parents' brilliance, that destroyed their creativity, are the same education systems that will destroy your children's unique sparks as well. There's nothing new coming along. And there's nothing new coming along because we've had our imagination scared out of us. We stopped dreaming. And so today, what I really want to talk about is I want to kind of talk about why we stop dreaming and the effect that it has on us, and how we can return to our dreams again, how we can become a dreamer, a land of dreamers once more. You know, when they talk about Ireland as the land of saints and scholars, I like in my head to actually say, no, we were the land of dreamers. We were people who reflected, because that's what it is to dream. It's to reflect, to contemplate, to stop time and go, hold on, what exactly am I doing here? What exactly am I doing? And we were a land of dreamers. We dreamt as individuals. We dreamt as a collective. Think of the phenomenal structures that we created, the phenomenal stone structures in Ireland, the societies we created. This was born from collective dreaming. Our creation stories, our connection to goddesses, the imagination that went into our understanding of things. Eru, the Tuatha Dé Danann, the She, they're all the result of people who were advanced dreamers, people who were less obsessed with waking reality and connected to this other sphere, the other sphere of magic. And I'm going to explain some of these terms because I don't want to be dropping too much of the esoteric on you and leaving you in a state of confusion. But there is a thing that we are led to believe is the truth, and that is material reality. We grow up with this sense that if you cannot see something with your eyes, then it doesn't exist. We are a kind of a society who are detached from all but the most intense of feelings. We don't have this constant flow of communication with our more subtle feelings. Inside all of us are connections, umbilical cords to other magical realms, other layers of perception. When I say the word magic, I'm not talking about hocus pocus. I'm just really talking about the things that cannot be explained or contained by material reality. Seeing is just one layer of perception. You know that. There's a beautiful thing about when we are, when you're in nature, when we are in silence, when we kind of encounter these great thresholds like death and birth, you talk to people, you yourself have experience around death, you have experience around birth. There are things that happen during these thresholds that cannot be explained by material reality. There are things that are connected to like deep feelings, magic if you want. And that's really the thing that we've lost because of the dominance of our belief in material reality. This material reality too is very much the kind of the patriarchal mode of being. It's a masculine way of being in the world. You know yourself when you kind of have a feeling, a confused feeling inside your body and you're not sure what it is, and you try to rationalize it. And that really is the material reality side of your own personality, dismissing the inexplicable, the ineffable, the part of you that you can't really put a finger on. It's very important that we become more comfortable at not being able to explain things through language, that we can become more comfortable at connecting to this animal side of us, the side that just knows something. It just knows and it trusts that. And this is where magic comes into things. Magic is really when we create reality, rather than just accept it as it is. I believe that our ancestors created reality. I believe they were in a constant state of reality creation. And the reality creation was just them feeling through their bodies and feeling new realities. They were dreaming new realities into existence. We don't do that. We don't do that anymore because we have been so ashamed of this connection to imagination. I think that a big kind of damage, a big wound of colonialization and modernization and the industrial world and the deeply disempowering of effects of like institutional religion meant that we all kind of drifted away from the voices in our own heads. We felt embarrassed by our relationship with animals, our relationship with symbols. You know, we still, when I go home to Kildare, people go around waving at magpies, saluting magpies. And this, it's a token. It's a token of how we once were. We once were in this constant communication with the natural world. And this wasn't just some sort of folk gesture. There was power in it. And the power was enabled us to feel trust. And this is where we connect to this idea of dreams and the point of dreams, because dreams are how we shape reality. And when I say dreams, I don't just mean what happens when we go to bed at night. I mean what happens when we stop and we reflect. We very rarely stop these days. We move at such a rapid pace, and it is designed as such to squeeze the dreams out of a person. I mean, when you think of our first big conditioning ring of fire that we're forced to jump through, and it's the education system and the childhoods of children. And you see children come into this world loaded with dreams. Where did those dreams come from? The dreams came from the realm that they just left before they landed on Earth, a place of infinite possibility and abundance. And these children land with all these dreams, with all these powers, with all this magic. And we get them out of their beds at 7 o'clock in the morning and send them off to schools where they're separated from their parents, and they're forced to go through 40-minute slots, 45-minute slots of classes, learning shit like mathematics, being tested at a level where failure is not acceptable. You have to pass, you have to accumulate points. And then after school, race from activity to activity. And we do this all thinking it's for the best. But the reality is all of these movements are slowly disconnecting these small minds from their capacity to imagine and dream. Of course, there's saving graces. There's things that happen in the midst of this all where you still hold on to threads of your imagination. But I spend my days talking to adults, to grown-up Irish people who are very disconnected from their imagination, and they're very disconnected from their dreams, and they're depressed. And all of this happened because of the institution in schools that we come through, because of the stories that our parents shove on us. And what happens is society disconnects us from our capacity to dream, from our capacity to imagine something else. And we inherit a helplessness from our parents. We inherit a helplessness from our grandparents. And of course, because there was so much helplessness in our history, and we got trapped in the helplessness. But now you, listening to this, you don't need to be trapped anymore. This is not your fate. This is actually just a lack of imagination. We've been socialized into lives of mundanity and misery. My childhood was small, but I'm gonna be big. The lyric from the Fontaine song. I remember the first time I heard that. and thinking, God, that's everything. It's everything. How do you hold on to that? How do you hold on to that voice of resistance? How do you know, hey, my childhood was small, but I'm going to be big. I'm going to expand. And it's interesting, when I think about this and I think about I moved to Berlin when I was about 28 and I lived there for about 10 years. And there's a very interesting thing about the Irish in Berlin. They go wild. We all went wild there. Do you know, for a while, there was such opportunity to go wild. And we were able to sort of dream new lives into existence, and I had, friends who started who just started cross-dressing, started to just play with their gender. They started to play with their whole everything, their physique. They started to play a whole new life, lives of just like absolute freedom. Hedonism too, yeah, and huge destruction that went along with it. But freedom of expression and taking risks. And this was the beautiful thing. They stepped out of this system that disconnects us from our dreams and started to dream big. I really feel that a major reason that so many of us leave Ireland isn't just because it's so fucking hard to get a house or to do what you want there, but I think it really is just we want to be somewhere where we can dream more, where we can create different realities. I want to talk a little bit about my grandparents here. My grandparents from Kildare, Alex and Phil. Alex was a musician. He used to play saxophone. He played piano too. He was very, very good. I think he was just trained by ear. Do you know, he just picked it up. Isn't it amazing how you hear all these stories? I feel they're less now, but these stories of like our grandparents and our great grandparents who never but couldn't read music, but could play music. And that again, that's that connection, the connection to magic. It was still so alive back then. And so this is my granddad, and he could play music, and he was loved all around the country. He played in the big bands and would tour around. And then just family responsibilities. I think his father owned a bit of a pub in Athy, and my granddad then had to go work on the pub. And he hated it because he was connected to magic. He was connected to just making music and entertaining. And everyone in my family sort of referred to my grandfather as a dreamer. It was very interesting. It was that term, how he was a dreamer. And it meant that what they were referring to was just a certain way that he had of not really being there. He was always kind of lost in his own world. Like he would walk around the house humming or just coming up with songs. He'd maybe go to the bathroom to go to the loo, and he'd stay in there for a very long time just because a song would come to him and he'd start to hum it. And my grandmother, and God love her, she had her own struggles with this too, but she resented him. And she'd call him a dreamer. And it wasn't a compliment. It was from this place of resentment. And it was just, she felt that she, and rightly so, she had all the pressure of raising a family. And this is the interesting thing. Because my grandmother too was also magical. My grandmother was a Kelly Kelly. And people, and as all you good Irish folklorists know, Kelly Kellys have the gift of curing the whooping cough. So, all over the neighborhood, people would come to her asking for a piece of her bread because the bread could cure the whooping cough. And she'd get people knocking on her door at 3 a.m. saying, Mrs. Kelly, would you give us a piece of your bread there? The child is dying with the coughs. So both my grandparents had magic. Both of them were connected to things that were not really explainable by the material world. Here's my grandfather who could just connect to songs. Songs would appear to him. Here's my grandmother who just made normal brown bread with seeds and fruit and nuts, and that was it. There's no pharmaceutical ingredients inside of this that would have suggested, oh, this will cure their whooping cough. But it did, and people knew it did. Again, magic, something that the material reality can't really explain. Yet here they were, trapped in what I feel is the same scenario that so many of us get trapped in. We either connect to our magic or we drop into resentment. This is what happens. You either connect to the magic, you allow the magic to flow, or else you're lost in resentment. There's a lovely quote from the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas, a book that they somehow excluded from the Bible for some reason. I wonder why they did that. But the quote is this: if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. And I believe in this, that Thomas is directly talking to our authentic magic, our authentic capacity to create reality. So as you're listening to this right now, I wonder, how's your resentment? Are you feeling resentment towards others in your life? Are you feeling resentment towards your partner? Are you feeling resentment towards the world in general? Is this resentment in you? Because resentment is what grows in the place of not dreaming. If we do not dream, resentment grows instead. It's like rust. When we don't access these powers of ours, we become anxious. I used to have horrific anxiety. It was very interesting. Every morning I woke up and I'd feel it all over my chest, so tight. Even as a kid, I was absolutely riddled with anxiety. I would eat the clothes I was wearing. At my school jumpers, I would chew the wrists off them to the point where my mom would have to roll them up to nearly my elbows because I'd have huge holes just chewed through the fabric. I don't even know if I swallowed it or not. I think I just chewed them, and then they disappeared with my saliva and got lost on my arms or something, or fell on the floor. But I was riddled with anxiety. You see that in dogs sometimes, dogs who bite themselves. But that was me. Through so much of my life, just had this huge anxiety. And I can remember the first time that anxiety left was when I took ecstasy. I remember I was in a nightclub in Dublin, and it wasn't the first time I even took ecstasy. It was maybe like the third or fourth. I was in a nightclub in Dublin called Switch in Temple Bar. It was probably a drum and bass night. And I remember taking Mitsubishis and feeling fine. Maybe for the first time in my life, I had this sense of I'm not self-conscious, I'm free. And then many years later, I took ayahuasca. And I remember after the ayahuasca, having this phase of just 4 or 5 days of waking up every day, and waking up in a kind of a new reality. It was a new reality. I dropped into a realm where I felt no anxiety. And I woke up each morning and with a sense of, whoa, where is this gone? Where is the terror in my mind? And eventually it came back. But of course, at that stage, I was already diving into meditation, diving into more plant medicine, and doing all of this sort of work. Like, it turned me on to my own magic. And so now I can say that I really haven't felt anxiety in a very long time. I can't really remember the last time I woke up with overwhelming anxiety. And this is because I reconnected to my magic. I reconnected to something beyond material reality. You see, this is what happens. When all we have as a base of reference is material reality, then everything that goes up and down in material reality will take you up and down with it. You see, when you're constantly looking outside at the world to determine how you feel, you will be caught on the non-stop ups and downs and waves of the world. And they do this, you could say the powers that be, they do this on purpose. They cause recessions. Recessions don't happen, they're caused. It's a part of the market. They do it deliberately to play with prices. And with wars and things like this, the powers that be talk about wars happening, but wars are manipulated. Wars are kind of a very kind of our business strategy. And as we get caught up in this, as we stay connected to material reality, then we're just dragged along by material reality. We feel disempowered. We feel helpless. Remember, I said that before. We inherit our helplessness. There is a type of an institutional helplessness. It's by design. The more helpless we feel, the less inclined we are to do anything about it, and the less inclined we are to connect to our magic. All we want to connect to is numbness. So, what I want to talk about here as I approach the end of this podcast is I really want to help you to connect with magic, because it's so important that you can understand that there's a material reality, but there's also an ultimate reality. And this is deeply embedded into us. It's in our genes. As Irish people, are beautiful. As Irish people, we have this beautiful way of being industrial and pre-industrial at the same time. I think it was Yeats who said that the Celt has a natural spirituality. He said that all people are spiritual if you scratch the surface, but the Celt, you don't even need to scratch the surface. And that is us. We are so wired for spirituality. And there's this concept in Irish, it's a word imel, and it means a liminal space or a border between worlds, a threshold. And the more you can connect with these borders, with these liminal spaces, with these thresholds, the easier it becomes to create and manipulate your own reality. The more you can kind of invite belief and trust that there is a different reality, that seeing is just one level of perception, but feeling is another, sensing is another, dreaming the things that might happen, dreaming the things into existence rather than suffering from a material reality in front of your eyes. You know, the ancient Irish, they had a place too called Mag Mell, and I might be pronouncing that wrong. And it was this other world. It was another world that ran parallel to our own. And the beautiful Manchán Magan, the late beautiful Manchán Magan, he wrote about this extensively. And it's interesting too, I've had a number of people who've spoke to me of how, if you've never heard of this person, he wrote extensively on many of these subjects, and the connection between the Irish and spirituality, and the spirituality that existed with our connection with the land. I know many people who he's visited since his death. My dad visits me often since my death. He appears in the shape of robins. He appears in songs. He's there in the background. This is available to us. This is our magic. And so this idea that we can begin to just divest from material reality. It doesn't mean that we no longer stop showing up in the world, but that we understand that there is something that happens in us before material reality appears. There's this old adage that the mirror doesn't smile until you do. And when we can begin to connect to our own creativity, our own magic, when we can begin to just look to nature, look to symbolism, look to the huge swathe of feelings and wisdom and natural spirituality that is already inside of you and doesn't need to be explained by me and doesn't need to be explained by books. It just needs to be felt. That's it. There's an old Ulster Scots expression that my grandmother used to say, and she used to say some things are just better felt than telt. And it's true. Your spirituality is not something that I can tell you about, but it's something I can tease you to get involved with. You know, while making this podcast in the last few days, I've been visited by a symbol. Very interesting. Showing up in tattoos, and people walking in front of me, showing up in jackets, just appearing everywhere. And it's been snakes. I've been visited by snakes. And I remember an old friend of mine, Laura Lavelle, she's a cabaret singer and a comedian. And she's in a comedic duo called the Wild Geese. And she talked about this idea of bringing the snakes back to Ireland. And I think in Laura's case, what she was referring to was our sexuality, the divine feminine, all of the beautiful matriarchal elements of ancient Irish society. And I'd like to add too that I think the snake was our imagination. It was this slithery cord that connected us with the other reality. And when they removed snakes, metaphorically, when the snakes were taken out of Ireland, metaphorically, we all became orphans. It was a little bit like they disconnected us from our true parents, because we were ashamed to go into the world of our imagination. We were ashamed to be dreamers. We were ashamed to go hug trees, scream at the moon, look to the birds for advice, look to our feelings for what decision we'd make next. We've become heavily logical people, but it doesn't suit us. Irish people are naturally imaginative, and our imagination is what creates us, or what sort of connects us to magic. And when you're connected to magic, and when you're connected to ultimate reality and other worlds, there's no more anxiety, because you feel free to take risks. As Terence McKenna wrote, nature loves courage. And what happens when you've been as fear-stricken as the Irish were is that we become tremendously risk-averse. But the thing that happens when you're risk-averse, when you don't take any risks, is you live in constant fear. This idea of bringing the snakes back is really just about us taking risks again, and risking that our imagination and our instinct and our dreams are pointing us in the right direction. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say today. Thank you very much. Also, I get lovely messages from people, beautiful messages, and I really appreciate them. So if you're ever thinking, oh, I'll send them a message, or sure, I won't send them a message, you won't read it. I do. I love them. They encourage me a lot, because sometimes, well, as much as I'm connected to my magic, I'm still a human person, and I have my doubts. I wonder, is this the thing I should be doing, or did I say too much, or whatever. So those little messages, those little words of kindness are absolutely gorgeous to me, and they move me on. I move on. That's great. My calendar is open for November. If you want to do a one-on-one session, I have a course called Healing from Irishness. It's becoming a movement, by the way. I really feel that this could be the generation who finally free themselves. A free Ireland, at least emotionally and individually and collectively. What else? That's it. I have a Patreon where we go deep into spirituality. over the next few months, we will be doing a course in shamanism, connecting to the magic inside of us. So if you like the themes of this podcast, then you're going to love the Patreon. You can join for a free week's trial as well. That's it. Thanks. Love you all. Take care. Slán. Bye bye now.